Hey guys, tonight we're wandering into a Roman night that smells of ripening citrus and warm stone, a night so still you can hear the tiniest pebble roll across the path. You're stepping through an orchard on the outskirts of the empire, where moonlight clings to the leaves like powdered silver, and every breeze carries a whisper of something half forbidden. The air is thick with the scent of crushed basil and bitter orange peel, a perfume that promises more than simple fruit. You can feel the uneven stones under your sandals, and somewhere beyond the wall, a lone nightbird calls out, as if it knows, the gossip you're about to hear. Honestly, you'd never survive a Roman midnight orchard party. Too many sly glances, too many slyer recipes. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is where you are right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You move deeper, between the trees, each branch bending with fruit heavy as hidden hearts. The ground is a quilt of fallen petals and tiny snails shining like pearls. You pause, catching the distant murmur of voices. Two women trading secrets behind a crumbling arch. They speak of charms and powders, of a goddess whose name the priests say too loudly by day but whisper with mischief by night. The moonlight slides across a low stone altar, its surface etched with faint grooves. Some say tally marks of lovers' vows, though the scholars are still arguing about that. A soft laugh drifts through the leaves, warm as spiced wine. You follow the sound, feeling the cool night press against your skin like a second tunic. The orchard breathes around you, ancient and patient, holding stories of love spells mixed in clay cups, of garden trysts hidden from the city's eyes, of the strange. Little rituals Romans swore would bind hearts tighter than any imperial decree. You drift closer to the murmuring voices, until the orchard opens into a small clearing, where the moon paints everything in a soft, pewter glow. Two women stand at a stone bench, their silhouettes outlined by the faint shimmer of olive oil lamps. You hear the clink of ceramic as they mix a paste of crushed herbs and powdered mineral, the aroma sweet and resinous. One wears a cloak dyed deep indigo, the other a tunic the color of ripe figs. They move with a practiced ease, as if this midnight recipe has been handed down for generations. The taller woman tilts her head, catching sight of you through the branches, but instead of surprise, a slow smile flickers across her face. Curiosity is a kind of magic, she says, voice low, words flowing like warm honey. You shift your weight on the packed earth, the coolness of the night seeping through your sandals, and wonder if you should answer. Behind them, an ancient fig tree leans like a conspirator, its trunk scarred with symbols you almost recognize. Some are hearts, others spirals, and one long groove shaped like a question mark. The scholars still debate whether these marks were idle carvings or secret alphabets of lovers. You run a finger across the nearest groove and feel a faint warmth, as if the stone itself remembers whispered vows. The shorter woman sprinkles a pinch of golden powder into the mixture. A sudden breeze carries the scent toward you. Sharp citrus, a hint of iron, and something like fresh bread just pulled from an oven. Your stomach rumbles. The taller one laughs softly. Even the gods like a snack with their spells. Her eyes glitter with mischief as she stirs the paste with a bronze rod. The sound a gentle scrape like a distant cicada. You can almost taste the night, oil, orange, and a sweetness that lingers on the back of your tongue. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks once and falls silent, as if the city itself has agreed to keep this secret. A lantern flickers, casting shadows that dance across the women's faces, revealing fleeting expressions, concentration, delight, a trace of something like melancholy. Perhaps they too wonder if their magic is more hope than certainty. One woman lifts the bowl toward the moonlight. "For Venus," she whispers, "and for the hearts that dare." The other nods, her smile as soft as the night itself. You feel the urge to bow, not out of fear, but respect for a ritual that has survived empires, gossip, and the endless debate of historians who still argue whether love or chance holds greater power. The two women turn back to their stone bench as you linger in the edge of shadow, the night air thick with the scent of crushed herbs and faint citrus. The taller one traces a circle in the air with her bronze rod, her lips moving in a murmur you can barely catch. The syllables roll like gentle waves, a mix of Latin and something older, perhaps a fragment of Etruscan or a half-forgotten Greek dialect. You lean forward to hear, the tatami-like texture of the orchard floor rough under your knees. A night moth drifts between you and the moon, its wings flashing silver, and for a moment you feel as if the world has slowed to match the cadence of her chant. The shorter woman places a small clay tablet on the bench. With a stylus, she scratches a pattern of spirals and stars, each stroke deliberate, her brow furrowed. The soft scraping of metal on clay mingles with the distant splash of a fountain. You wonder if this is an incantation or a recipe, because honestly it could be either. The Romans were experts at turning dinner into ceremony and ceremony into dinner. Somewhere a night bird gives a sharp cry, and you catch yourself whispering a joke to no one. Must be the quality control inspector. Your own voice sounds thin against the heavy air, and you half expect the moth to take offense. A jar appears from beneath the taller woman's cloak, its glaze a deep teal that shimmers like the Tiber at dawn. She pours a viscous liquid into the bowl, olive oil dark as midnight. The aroma blooms immediately, mixing with the earlier citrus. You can taste it on the back of your tongue, like a memory of warm bread dipped in sweet wine. You fight the urge to ask for a sample. Maybe that's the real magic, making you crave a midnight snack while pretending to summon love. She gestures toward a bundle of herbs tied with crimson cord. "From Serene," she says softly. And though you're sure she isn't speaking to you, the sound lands as if she is. Serene, you recall, was famed for silphium, that almost mythical plant the ancients swore could flavor a stew and prevent an unplanned heir. Scholars still argue about whether it truly vanished or simply grew under another name. And you imagine a conference of academics debating birth control methods, while you stand here breathing in the lost perfume of history. The shorter woman chuckles, catching your gaze. "You're thinking too loudly," she teases, and it strikes you that she shouldn't be able to see you in the dark. Yet her eyes glint like polished amber, amused and knowing. "This isn't the first time someone has watched," she adds, brushing stray leaves from the tablet. "Even the priest peeked once, back when the Senate still worried about such things." You blink, unsure whether she's joking. Probably both. A breeze slides through the orchard, carrying the rustle of pomegranate leaves and the faint sweetness of figs. You pull your cloak tighter, feeling the temperature dip. The taller woman begins to sing, low and slow, a melody that coils like incense smoke. It's not a hymn you recognize, but its rhythm matches the gentle throb of your heartbeat. Her voice rises, then falls, a sound somewhere between a lullaby and a spell. The shorter woman joins in, her harmony weaving around the melody until the night itself seems to hum. As the song swells, the moonlight brightens, or maybe your eyes adjust. You notice other figures at the far edge of the grove. A young man carrying a basket of oranges, an older woman with a reed flute, a child clutching a bundle of fresh mint. They move quietly, as if drawn by the music rather than any spoken invitation. Each kneels in turn, laying small offerings, honey cakes, rose petals, tiny copper coins around the stone bench. No one speaks. The only sound is the duet of voices and the occasional chirp of a restless cricket. You crouch lower, mesmerized by the ritual's unhurried grace. It strikes you that this is not about spectacle. There are no grand gestures, no thunderclaps of divine approval. Instead, it is a slow, deliberate weaving of scent, sound, and shadow. The kind of magic that doesn't need to announce itself because it's already everywhere. In the way the herbs release their oils under gentle pressure, in the way the air thickens with shared intent, in the way your own breathing unconsciously matches the singer's. The young man with the basket steps forward, presenting an orange to the taller woman. She slices it with a bronze knife, releasing a spray of juice that sparkles in the moonlight. The aroma bursts through the clearing, bright, tart, alive. She rubs a drop of juice along the rim of the clay tablet, tracing the carved stars until they gleam wetly. "For luck," she whispers. The older woman with the flute follows, blowing a single soft note that lingers like the aftertaste of wine. You realize this gathering is half market, half midnight mass, and entirely human. A celebration of longing, perhaps, but also of survival. People claiming a sliver of control in a world ruled by emperors and unpredictable gods. The historians, you suspect, would debate endlessly whether this was religion, rebellion, or just a pleasant excuse to stay out past curfew. And you can almost hear their arguments drifting across the centuries, each scholar with a different translation of the same sweet scent. The song fades, leaving a silence so deep you can hear the pulse in your ears. One by one, the visitors bow and slip back into the orchard, their footsteps swallowed by the grass. The taller woman caps the jar of oil, her motions unhurried, as if time itself waits for her. The shorter one wipes the stylus and smiles, a mischievous curve that suggests she knows exactly how many invisible guests, like you, have been eavesdropping tonight. You stay hidden as they gather their tools, tucking herbs into satchels and extinguishing the lamps with a gentle puff. The moon now hangs lower, a thin silver coin tossed across the dark. You exhale, realizing you've been holding your breath. The orchard smells richer than before, citrus sharpness mellowed by warm olive, a hint of honey from the cakes left behind. Your thoughts drift, soft and heavy, until the world feels like a slow tide. As the women disappear into the deeper shadows, a final whisper reaches you. Carried on the breeze, love needs no witness. You aren't sure if it was meant for you or for the night itself. But either way, it settles in your chest like a secret you'll never quite put into words. A quiet promise that the orchard will remember long after empires crumble and scholars finish their debates. You stay crouched among the pomegranate trees, the damp soil pressing a faint chill through your sandals. As the clearing empties, the night around you stretches wide and calm, a velvet darkness stitched with pinpricks of stars. You shift your weight and feel the whisper of crushed leaves beneath your heel. The scent that lingers is intoxicating, citrus sharpness layered over olive oil and a trace of smoke from the just extinguished lamps. It's the kind of fragrance that refuses to stay politely in the background. It nudges at your senses like a cat demanding attention. You inhale again, and for a heartbeat you could swear you taste honey and bronze on the back of your tongue. You ease forward toward the stone bench, half expecting a hidden sentry to leap from the shadows. Nothing. Only the soft chorus of crickets and the distant lap of water against the Tiber's banks. The bowl the women used still sits there, catching the moonlight in a thin gleam. Inside is a residue of their potion, a swirl of green and amber flecked with tiny gold sparks, perhaps from crushed resin, perhaps just the moon playing tricks. You fight the impulse to dip a finger in. The thought of waking tomorrow with a mysterious Roman rash stops you. Still, the smell is maddeningly sweet. A faint clatter interrupts your thoughts. You turn and notice a figure emerging from a side path. A man robed in russet wool, his steps measured and deliberate. He carries a staff capped with a small bronze owl. The owl's eyes catch the light and seem to blink. He's older, his beard silvered, his posture straight as a spear. He notices you immediately, but rather than alarm, a dry amusement curves his mouth. "Late night for a wanderer," he says, his Latin crisp and clear. You start to stammer an excuse, but he waves it away. "I know why you're here. Everyone comes eventually. Curiosity is the oldest god." He steps closer, the faint squeak of his leather sandals punctuating each word. "Did you witness the working?" You nod before you realize he's asked a question. He gives a small grunt, half approval, half reminder that you are very much out of your depth. He kneels by the stone bench and examines the bowl. "They used Serene silphium," he murmurs, "or what passes for it now. Scholars still debate whether the plant truly vanished or simply disguised itself as something less glamorous. Perhaps it hides in plain sight like love itself." He glances at you, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "We priests argue over such things when the Senate grows dull. Keeps us awake." You almost laugh at the image of solemn old men debating herbal taxonomy like gossiping bakers. The man dips a finger into the mixture and lifts it to his nose, inhaling with a practiced flair. "Olive base, yes. Orange peel, of course. And myrrh, clever. Myrrh binds the scent, holds it through the night. Lovers will thank them in the morning." He wipes his finger on the hem of his robe without concern for stains. The recipe is older than the Republic. Some say it came from the Phoenicians. Others claim a goddess whispered it to a shepherd. Naturally, historians continue to quarrel about which is true. But the quarrel, my friend, is half the fun. He settles onto the stone bench and pats the spot beside him. You hesitate, then sit. the cool stone radiating a faint warmth where the night has held it like a secret. He taps the bronze owl with a single knuckle, and it gives a tiny chime, perhaps a trick of the metal, perhaps something more. "Do you know why these charms matter?" he asks. You shake your head. "They are less about bending another's heart and more about reminding one's own," he explains. "To craft a spell is to admit desire. To admit desire is to be alive. The empire may crumble, the senate may bicker, but a heart that dares is a thing of eternity." He pauses, his gaze fixed on the distant flicker of a temple torch. Even Jupiter cannot outlaw longing, though by all means the senses keep trying. You smile despite yourself, imagining Roman officials writing stern decrees about how much yearning citizens are allowed per household. The old priest chuckles softly as if he's heard your thought. "Desire," he says, "is the best rebellion." A breeze drifts through the orchard, stirring the lamp's faint smoke into new shapes. You catch the sound of water again, steady, rhythmic. The priest notices your glance toward the river. "The Tiber carries these stories," he says. "Every drop that touches this grove carries whispers to the sea. Some nights sailors swear the water itself smells of orange blossom. Perhaps they are right." He rises with surprising ease and offers you a hand. His grip is firm, calloused, warm. "Walk with me," he says. You follow him down a path lined with low stone walls, etched with graffiti centuries old. Figures of hearts, moons, and cryptic initials glow faintly in the moonlight. You trace a carved fish with your fingertips. The grooves feel alive, as if the stone has never quite hardened. "Young lovers," the priest says. "They carved their pledges here when the city slept. The marks outlasted their names. That is the quiet miracle of stone and desire." As you walk, he recounts small stories. Of a baker who left secret love notes baked inside loaves. Of a senator's daughter who disguised herself as a lamplighter to meet her musician lover. Of a soldier who carried a sachet of dried lavender into every battle because it smelled like home. Each tale unfolds slowly, like the peel of an orange curling from the fruit, and you feel time itself relax. The priest's voice is steady, melodic, a lullaby for the restless. Finally, the path opens to a terrace overlooking the Tiber. The river glimmers under the moon, carrying fragments of torchlight like scattered coins. The priest leans on his staff and inhales deeply. "The night is almost spent," he says, "but the heart never is." He turns to you with a faint smile. "Tell me, traveler, what charm do you carry that no one else can see?" You search for an answer but find only silence. "Perhaps that is enough." The priest nods as if you've spoken volumes. "Good," he whispers. "Some secrets should remain your own." He taps the bronze owl once more, and the tiny chime seems to ripple across the river. Then, without ceremony, he steps back into the orchard's shadows, his russet robe merging with the trees, until only the faint glint of the owl remains, and then that too is gone. You stand alone on the terrace, the scent of citrus and myrrh still clinging to the air. The river's murmur blends with the distant call of an unseen bird. You breathe in, slow and deep, feeling the night settle around you like a soft cloak. Somewhere behind you, the orchard continues its quiet work. Roots drinking moonlight, stones remembering vows, history folding another secret into its endless embrace. You linger on the terrace, the stone balustrade cool beneath your palms, while the Tiber murmurs its endless song below. The river carries a faint perfume of moss and silt, and unless your imagination has completely unraveled, a trace of that orange blossom the priest mentioned. You breathe in and let the night settle across your shoulders like a cloak you didn't know you owned. Behind you, the orchard sighs in the breeze, a soft rustle that sounds almost like applause for a performance you're not sure you gave. A flicker of movement pulls your attention downstream. A small skiff glides along the moonlit water, its single lantern bobbing like a captured star. The rower stands instead of sits, pushing with long, deliberate strokes. Each dip of the pole sends ripples of silver across the dark current. You half expect the figure to vanish like a dream, but the boat continues its slow, patient path, a reminder that not all journeys need urgency. For a moment you wonder if the priest summoned it, another quiet envoy of the night's peculiar magic. Curiosity tugs at you. You follow the narrow path along the terrace, its flagstones slick with evening dew. At a bend, the orchard gives way to a courtyard hemmed in by columns whose capitals are carved with tiny owls. Their stone eyes gleam faintly, as if remembering the priest's bronze talisman. Between the columns, torches gutter in wrought iron brackets, casting puddles of amber light that dance across the mosaic floor. The tiles depict a garden in miniature, vines curling around baskets of fruit, birds frozen mid-flight, a fountain spilling endless blue tesserae. You step carefully, your sandals making the faintest tap against the ancient artistry. A new scent greets you, resinous pine mixed with honey, as if someone has just doused a candle made of forest and orchard. At the far end of the courtyard, a trio of figures sits cross-legged on a low platform. 2 men and a woman, all clad in tunics dyed the color of late summer plums. Before them burns a shallow bronze brazier, its coals breathing a slow red glow. The woman raises her head first. Her hair is braided with thin ribbons of teal and saffron that catch the firelight. "I carry the orchard on your clothes," she says in Latin as smooth as water. The scent travels faster than footsteps. You glance down and notice a faint smear of green on your sleeve, likely the herb mixture from the stone bench. One of the men gestures toward the brazier. "Join us," he says. His voice is a gentle rumble, like distant thunder softened by clouds. The night is generous and we have stories to share. You lower yourself onto a cushion opposite them. The heat from the coals spreads pleasantly toward your chilled hands. The woman sprinkles powdered resin onto the fire. A ribbon of smoke curls upward, carrying a sweet aroma of myrrh and something faintly peppery. "Frankincense and bay," she explains. "For clarity." She tilts her head, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Though the historians will argue forever about which goddess prefers which scent. They always do. The second man, slight of build, with eyes bright as freshly minted coins, leans forward. "We trade in the old charms," he says. "Songs and powders, tales and little spells. Not to ensnare hearts, but to remind them they can still be moved." He plucks a small lyre from the shadows beside him, its strings glinting like captured moonbeams. With a deft flick of his fingers, a melody unfurls, low and languid, each note a ripple across the quiet. The sound is almost a conversation, the way it leans and pauses. You catch yourself swaying gently, your breath falling into rhythm with the music. The woman begins to hum, a harmony that threads through the lyre's voice like silver through silk. You close your eyes and imagine the courtyard centuries ago, patricians reclining, servants moving like silent tides, the air thick with perfume and intrigue. The past and present blur until you can't tell if you're remembering or dreaming. When the final note dissolves, the taller man speaks again. "Once, in the reign of Antoninus, a senator's daughter carved her beloved's name into a lemon and set it afloat on this very river. They say it reached the sea still fragrant, and he knew to follow." He smiles wryly. "The scholars debate whether such a journey is possible, but we say the lemon knew the way." The woman adds her own tale. A baker who hid messages in honey cakes, tiny tablets of wax sealed inside layers of dough. Lovers exchanged them during Saturnalia, when the city's rules bent like willow branches. "Some historians insist the story is only metaphor," she says, eyes twinkling. "Others have found the tablets." She shrugs lightly. "Either way, the cakes were delicious." You laugh softly and they join you. The sound carries upward, startling a pair of doves that flutter from a high ledge. Their wings beat a gentle drum overhead before settling back into stillness. The lyre player sets his instrument aside and leans closer. "Would you like a charm of your own?" he asks. From a pouch at his belt, he produces a small packet wrapped in indigo cloth. Inside, dried petals of rose and orange, a drop of resin, a whisper of night air. Nothing binding, nothing dangerous, only a reminder. He places it in your open palm. The cloth is warm, as if it has been waiting specifically for you. The woman traces a circle in the air above your hand. "A charm is a memory you choose in advance," she says. "Carry it, and you will remember this night even when the world forgets." Her voice lowers to a near whisper. "Some memories must be invited to stay." A breeze stirs the brazier's smoke, sending a ribbon of scent across your face, sweet, resinous, faintly citrus. You tuck the packet into your cloak, feeling its gentle weight against your chest. For a moment, everything slows. The crackle of the coals, the quiet breathing of your companions, the distant hush of the river. The lyre player finally breaks the silence with a soft chuckle. "The Empire will argue about taxes and triumphs," he says, "but nights like this are the true history. Lovers, friends, strangers under the same moon." He meets your eyes. "Tell that to the scholars. If they ever stop debating long enough to listen, You rise reluctantly, sensing the gathering has reached its quiet conclusion. The woman nods in farewell. The men offer small, knowing smiles. You step back into the corridor of owled columns, the torches guttering low as if bowing you out. The night beyond waits vast and calm, carrying with it the scent of frankincense orange peel and the faintest promise of secrets still unspoken. As you walk, the mosaic floor seems to shimmer beneath the moonlight. You glance once more toward the courtyard, but the trio has vanished, leaving only the glowing coals and a single owl's shadow stretching long across the stone, a silent witness to a story you will carry like a hidden charm long after dawn creeps over Rome. The corridor of owled columns funnels you back toward the orchard, each step soft against the damp flagstones. Behind you, the courtyard has gone utterly silent. Even the faint crackle of the brazier has dissolved into the night. Ahead, the trees sway in a slow rhythm, their branches making hush-hush sounds as if they know exactly what you've tucked into your cloak. The small indigo packet presses against your chest with a subtle weight, lighter than a coin, heavier than a memory you've promised to keep. You pause beneath an arch of climbing vines. Moonlight drips through the leaves in silver beads, and for a moment you simply stand there, breathing. The night is fragrant with pine resin from the courtyard, layered over the persistent sweetness of citrus. It's a scent that seems to seep into your skin and settle in your bones. A gentle breeze slides past, carrying the faint murmur of distant voices, so soft they could be echoes of your own thoughts. A low wooden gate appears at the end of the path, carved with twisting patterns of ivy and tiny hearts. When you lift the latch, it gives a polite creak, as though warning whoever waits inside that a guest is coming. The space beyond is narrower, more intimate, a walled garden bathed in moonlight with a single marble fountain at its center. Water spills from the mouth of a carved dolphin, the sound a delicate counterpoint to the distant river. The air here is cooler, laced with the mineral tang of fresh stone. On a bench near the fountain sits a young scribe, barely more than a boy, his wax tablet balanced across his knees. A small oil lamp at his side throws a puddle of amber light that glimmers on his dark curls. He looks up, startled but not frightened. "You walk softly," he says in Latin that lilts like music. "For a moment I thought you were a story, not a person." You smile, unsure how to answer. He gestures toward the bench. "Sit, if you like." The night has room for more listeners than speakers. His voice carries the calm assurance of someone who spends long hours with ink and parchment, conversing mostly with silence. You sit, the marble cool through the fabric of your cloak. The fountain's gentle splash punctuates the stillness. On his tablet, neat lines of characters shine in the lamplight. You recognize fragments of Greek and Latin, maybe even a sprinkle of Phoenician symbols. He catches your glance. "It's a letter," he explains, "but not to anyone who can read it. A love letter for the wind." Your eyebrows lift. "The wind?" "Yes." He smiles, a little sheepish but unashamed. "I write for the breeze to carry. Maybe someone will hear it, maybe no one. Either way, the words travel." He dips his stylus again, tracing another careful curve. "My grandmother told me every word released to the night finds a heart that needs it." The scholars argue, of course, whether that's faith or folly. Let them argue. You watch the stylus dance. Each stroke leaves a faint gleam, and you imagine the letters lifting like moths once the wax cools. The scribe pauses as if weighing a confession. "I write for someone who left with the legions," he says quietly. "A centurion. He carried a sachet of lavender for luck. I promised to write until he returned." He gives a small shrug. "The empire is wide. My words must travel farther than the armies. There's a long silence, but it's a comfortable one." The fountain gurgles. The lamp hums faintly. You think about the priest's question on the terrace. What charm you carry that no one sees. Perhaps this boy's charm is his unspoken hope, etched nightly onto wax. "Would you like to write?" he asks suddenly, offering the stylus. "You don't have to carve a name, just a thought the night can keep." You hesitate, then take the stylus. Its tip is warm from his hand. The wax yields with a soft resistance as you scratch a simple spiral, a sign older than any alphabet. You add a single word, silent private. The scribe leans over to look, but you shield it playfully. He chuckles, understanding. "A secret for the wind," he says. He sets the tablet on the fountain's edge and tilts it toward the moon. The wax glints like dark water. "When dawn comes," he says, "the The sun will warm it and the letters will rise like mist. That's when the wind listens best. You find yourself whispering a thank you, though you're not sure to whom. Perhaps to the boy, perhaps to the night itself. He nods as if he hears more than words. Travel safely, he says. May your story reach the heart that needs it. You stand, the indigo packet shifting softly in your cloak as if reminding you of its presence. The boy returns to his writing, the lamp's glow wrapping him in a small golden world. You leave him to his quiet mission and step back toward the orchard. The path curves through a thicket of laurel. The leaves brush your shoulders, releasing a clean, sharp aroma that mixes with the lingering orange. You remember a line from some forgotten poet about laurel protecting travelers from mischief, though other scholars claim it merely keeps away flies. Historians still debate naturally. You grin to yourself at how often the night echoes with their phantom arguments. A break in the foliage reveals a tiny amphitheater carved into the hillside, no bigger than a village square. Stone benches form a semicircle around a central stage paved with worn mosaics. A single torch burns at the far end, casting long shadows like ink strokes across the stone. Seated on the lowest bench is a woman draped in a cloak of deep indigo, the color of the late evening sea. She hums a melody so faint it seems to rise from the stones themselves. You descend the steps, each one cool and slightly uneven. The woman glances up but does not stop humming. Her eyes catch the torchlight, soft, reflective, unreadable. When you reach the center, she speaks without preamble. This place remembers every story ever told, she says. Sit and you will hear the echoes. You obey, settling onto a bench still warm from the day's sun. The amphitheater holds a hush so deep you can hear your own heartbeat. The woman gestures toward the mosaic floor where faded figures, lovers, dancers, perhaps gods, frolic in eternal celebration. People think magic is in the potion, she continues, her voice a gentle cadence. But the real magic is in the telling. Each word you speak joins the chorus of those who came before. Even the quiet ones count. She leans forward slightly, her cloak pooling like midnight around her feet. Tell me one thing you have learned tonight. Her question hangs in the air like incense smoke. You consider the priest's riddles, the trio's music, the scribe's silent letters. At last you say, that desire is older than empires. A smile blooms on her face, slow and luminous. Yes, she whispers, older and far more patient. She lifts a small bell from her lap and rings it once. The sound is clear but soft, a single note that seems to travel outward in invisible ripples. Now your words are part of this place, she says. They will rest here until someone else needs them. The bell's echo fades into the night, leaving a quiet so profound it feels like a blessing. You sit with it, breathing in the mingled scents of laurel, citrus, and cool stone, until even the memory of movement becomes a gentle dream. Somewhere beyond the orchard, Rome continues its noisy arguments, but here the world is nothing but heartbeat and hush. The amphitheater holds you in a silence that feels ancient and alive. The single torch painting, slow shadows across the worn mosaics. For a moment you imagine the stone figures beneath your feet. Dancers mid-spin, lovers mid-embrace, shifting when no one looks, stretching after centuries of stillness. The woman in indigo studies you with calm eyes that reflect the flicker of flame. She does not speak again, and somehow that feels like the truest conversation you've had all night. When you finally stand, the stone bench releases a faint sigh of warmth, as though reluctant to let you go. The woman inclines her head, a gesture so small it might be mistaken for a breeze. Walk with care, she murmurs, and her voice carries the weight of closing doors and quiet blessings. Then she lowers her gaze to the bell in her lap, and you understand that whatever questions linger must remain your own. The path out of the amphitheater winds upward through terraces of thyme and rosemary. Their fragrance rises with every step, sharp and green, mixing with the sweet citrus still clinging to your clothes. You trail your hand along the low stone wall, its surface rough and cool. In the distance, the Tiber glints like a spilled necklace of silver. Above, the moon has begun its slow descent, a pale coin tilting toward the horizon. Halfway up, you come upon a small alcove cut into the hillside. A fresco covers the wall, faded but still alive with color. Figures of men and women stand in a circle, holding sprigs of laurel and cups of wine. Some wear masks of foxes and owls, their painted eyes wide and bright. Beneath them runs a line of Latin, amor vincit cuncta, love conquers all. Scholars, of course, argue whether the phrase began as poetry or propaganda. You trace the letters with a fingertip, the paint surprisingly smooth despite the centuries. The path crests at a platform overlooking the orchard. From here you can see the scattered lanterns of Rome blinking like grounded stars. A faint breeze lifts the hem of your cloak and carries the city's distant murmur. Vendors closing stalls, guards exchanging shifts, someone laughing in a tavern far below. Yet here, above it all, the night remains unhurried. A soft shuffle draws your attention to a nearby stair. An elderly woman ascends, balancing a shallow basket on one hip. Her tunic is the color of saffron, warm even in the moonlight. Strands of silver hair escape her scarf, catching the breeze. She nods in greeting, eyes bright with a humor that needs no words. Without hesitation, she settles beside you and lowers the basket to the stone. Inside lies an assortment of dried herbs, mint, rue, and small curls of something that looks like sun-browned citrus peel. She notices your glance and smiles. "For the morning market," she says, her Latin softened by an accent you can't quite place, but some must be offered to the night first. From a leather pouch she pulls a handful of the citrus peel and scatters it over the edge of the platform. The pieces flutter down like fragments of golden moonlight. You ask if the offering is for a particular deity. She chuckles. "For any who are listening," she replies. "Venus, Fortuna, or simply the wind. It is good manners to share a little sweetness with the dark." She selects a piece of mint and hands it to you. "Bite," she urges. Keeps you awake long enough to finish your dreams. The mint releases a bright, cool spark on your tongue, chasing away the heaviness that had begun to settle behind your eyes. The woman inhales deeply, her gaze sweeping the city below. "When I was young," she says, "my mother told me every herb carries a memory. Mint remembers courage, rue remembers forgiveness, orange remembers joy." She lifts a slice of dried peel and holds it to the moonlight. "And this remembers love that lingers even when the lovers are dust." She lets the peel fall and turns to you. "Do you know why the Romans filled their gardens with citrus?" she asks. Before you can answer, she continues, "Not only for the taste, though the scholars argue about that too. It is because citrus trees keep blooming and fruiting at once, flowers and fruit together. A promise that something new is always beginning, even as something else ripens." Her smile deepens the lines at the corners of her eyes. That is a lesson worth offering to the night. A gust of wind sweeps the platform, carrying the sharp fragrance of mint and orange into the darkness. Somewhere below, a temple bell tolls once, the sound rolling through the hills like a slow heartbeat. The woman tilts her head, listening. "Time to go," she says softly. The night is generous, but dawn is punctual. Before you can respond, she gathers her basket and descends the stairs, her saffron tunic glowing briefly like captured sunlight before the shadows swallow her. You remain on the platform, the taste of mint still bright on your tongue, and the idea of flowers and fruit together lingering in your mind. You begin the descent back toward the orchard. The steps are slick with dew now, each one catching the moonlight in a faint shimmer. Halfway down, you notice a niche in the wall where a small oil lamp burns steadily despite the breeze. Beside it lies a single sprig of laurel and a tiny bronze coin. An unspoken invitation. Without thinking, you place the piece of mint stem you've been holding next to the coin. The offering feels both personal and shared, a small acknowledgement of the countless travelers who have passed this way before. At the base of the stairs, the orchard welcomes you once more. The trees seem closer now, their trunks darker, their fruit glowing faintly like hidden lanterns. A nightingale trills from a distant branch, its song a thread of silver through the silence. You follow a winding path that leads toward the heart of the grove, where the moonlight pools in soft, luminous puddles. Here, in a small clearing, you find a stone table covered with petals, roses, violets, and something pale and unfamiliar. A shallow bowl rests in the center, filled with water that mirrors the stars. The petals drift lazily, nudged by a breeze you cannot feel. On the table's edge, someone has etched a phrase in Greek, Eros kryptos esti, love is hidden. Again, the scholars would argue whether it is warning or invitation. Tonight it feels like both. You sit on the low stone bench beside the table, letting the quiet soak through you. The fragrance of the petals rises, a soft chorus of floral notes layered with the lingering mint on your breath. You lean forward and touch the water. It is cool, almost startling after the warmth of the night air. The ripples you create distort the reflection of the stars, scattering them into brief galaxies. For a moment you imagine that each ripple carries a fragment of every story you've heard tonight. The priest's riddles, the liar's melody, the scribe's silent devotion, the woman's lesson of flowers and fruit. As the water stills, the stars gather again, calm and unbroken. You breathe deeply and realize that the orchard has given you something rarer than any charm or spell, the slow, patient rhythm of a world that continues to bloom, to fruit, and to remember, whether or not anyone is watching. Above you, a single orange blossom falls, silent and perfect, landing beside your hand. You lift it carefully, its scent bright and immediate, a final reminder that the night is both ending and beginning all at once. The orange blossom rests lightly in your palm, its petals cool and faintly damp, as though the moon itself had kissed them. You bring it to your nose and breathe in the layered fragrance, bright citrus, soft honey, a whisper of night air. It is both awakening and calming, a paradox that makes perfect sense in this orchard, where beginnings and endings share the same breath. You tuck the blossom into a fold of your cloak, careful not to crush it, and rise from the stone bench. The clearing narrows into a path flanked by low hedges of myrtle and rosemary. Their leaves brush against your sleeves as you pass, releasing bursts of green, peppery scent. Somewhere ahead, you hear the gentle trickle of water, a rhythm steadier than your own heartbeat. You follow it until the path widens into a small courtyard encircled by columns. In the center stands a circular pool, its surface reflecting the waning moon like a coin dropped into velvet. A solitary figure kneels at the water's edge, a man in a dark tunic, shoulders broad, hair bound loosely with a leather cord. Beside him rests a wooden lyre, and a small satchel lies open, spilling herbs and folded scraps of parchment. He does not turn when you approach, but you sense he knows you are there. The air around him carries the mingled aromas of laurel and burnt cedar, the smell of rituals and quiet music. When he finally speaks, his voice is low and unhurried. "You've walked far for someone seeking rest." His Latin is smooth, touched with an accent you cannot place. He gestures toward the pool. The water keeps secrets better than the stones. Sit if you wish. You lower yourself onto the marble rim. The pool's surface quivers under the faint breeze, scattering moonlight into liquid stars. The man dips his hand into the water, letting it trickle between his fingers. "This place," he says, "is older than the city. Before Rome had walls, lovers came here to speak their vows into the water. They believed the river carried their words to the gods of the sea." He gives a small shrug. Historians still argue whether such gods ever listened, but the river listens. That is enough. He picks up the lyre and plucks a single string. The note lingers clear and soft before fading into the night. Another note follows, then another, until a melody unfurls, a quiet stream of sound that seems to echo the rippling water. You close your eyes and let the music wash over you, the vibrations settling like warm sand across your shoulders. As he plays, he speaks again, the words weaving between the notes. "I once sang for a general who believed a song could calm an army." He was right for a while. Men who had never seen the sea closed their eyes and heard waves in the chords. Fear loosened its grip. He smiles faintly. Of course, the scholars debate whether music truly soothes or simply distracts. They would rather measure silence than listen to it. You laugh softly, and he glances at you, the corner of his mouth lifting. "They say laughter pleases the water spirits," he adds. "Perhaps you've already given them your offering." He leans closer, eyes reflecting the moonlight like polished bronze. "But tell me, what have you gathered tonight besides petals and shadows?" You consider the question. Images drift through your mind. The priest with his bronze owl, the scribe sending words to the wind, the woman scattering citrus peel for any listening god. "That longing is older than empires," you say at last. He nods slowly, as if you've spoken a truth he already knew. "Older and endless," he murmurs. He plucks another gentle chord. "Longing builds bridges no empire can burn." The melody shifts, becoming softer, more introspective. Each note feels like a ripple in a hidden lake. You realize you've matched your breathing to the rhythm, your thoughts quieting until only the sound remains. The water reflects the moon with such clarity that you half expect to see another sky beneath it. A secret world waiting for those patient enough to listen. When the final note fades, the man sets the lyre across his knees. He reaches into his satchel and withdraws a small clay vial sealed with wax. "For travelers," he says, offering it to you. "Rose oil mixed with lemon. A scent to remind you of tonight when daylight tries to erase it. The vial is cool in your hand, its surface rough but comforting. You unstopper it just enough to catch the fragrance. Bright lemon, soft rose, a trace of earth. It is both garden and memory, a blend that could outlast words. You reseal it carefully and slip it into your cloak beside the orange blossom. He studies you for a moment, then says, "When you leave, walk slowly. Let the night finish its story." He dips his fingers into the pool once more, releasing a small swirl that distorts the moon's reflection. Remember, the water carries what we cannot keep. You rise, offering a quiet thank you. He inclines his head, eyes returning to the pool as if you've already become part of its reflection. You retrace your steps through the myrtle-lined path, the faint sound of the lyre following you like a lingering thought. Back in the orchard, the moonlight has softened to a pale wash, and the fruit glows like lanterns fading at the edges. You move past trees heavy with oranges and lemons, their scent thick and familiar now. Every breath seems to carry a story, a priest's riddle, a boy's letter to the wind, a woman's bell note, a musician's quiet song. Near a cluster of fig trees, you spot another stone bench, this one half hidden by ivy. A carved relief on its side depicts two figures exchanging wreaths of flowers. The details are weathered but tender, the tilt of a head, the curve of a hand. You trace the carving and imagine the countless couples who once sat here, their laughter rising into nights like this one. Scholars would debate whether the bench marked a shrine or merely a favorite meeting place. You smile, thinking that perhaps it was both, because love rarely follows a single purpose. The night deepens, but you feel no urgency to leave. Each step you take is a continuation of a story that began long before you arrived and will linger long after you're gone. The orchard breathes around you, warm and patient, its leaves whispering secrets to the stars. In the distance, the Tiber hums its eternal song, carrying with it every vow, every laugh, every petal ever offered to its dark, listening waters. You pause beneath a tree where blossoms and fruit share the same branch, proof of the woman's lesson that beginnings and endings can exist together. A single drop of dew falls onto your wrist, cool as a promise. You let it stay there, a tiny moon captured on your skin before it slides away, joining the earth that never stops listening. You wander deeper into the orchard, following the faint music of the river and the almost imperceptible hush of wind through fruit-laden branches. The air has cooled, but the scent of orange blossom still drifts like a soft veil around you, mingling with the sharp green of laurel and the warm hint of crushed fig leaves. Each step feels slower now, as if the night itself is teaching you to move at the pace of a heartbeat rather than a clock. Somewhere overhead, a nightingale calls once, then waits as if listening for your reply. The path bends toward a low stone archway half hidden by ivy. When you brush aside the leaves, a courtyard opens before you, round and perfect like a coin. In its center stands a small altar of marble, worn smooth by centuries of hands. Faint carvings of Venus and Mars embrace along the edges, their outlines softened by time. A thin stream of water runs across the floor, catching moonlight in ripples of silver. You kneel instinctively, not in worship but in quiet acknowledgement of something older than language. A flicker of movement draws your eye. A young woman steps from the shadows, carrying a shallow bronze tray. Her tunic is dyed a deep teal, and her dark hair is crowned with a wreath of myrtle and orange blossoms. She does not startle when she sees you. Instead, she smiles with the calm of someone who expected you all along. "The night welcomes wanderers," she says in a gentle Latin lilt. "Have you come to leave an offering or to borrow one?" You hesitate, feeling the indigo packet still tucked against your chest and the clay vial of rose and lemon oil in your pocket. "Perhaps both," you admit. Her eyes brighten. "That is the best answer." She sets the tray upon the altar, revealing a collection of small items: dried petals, smooth river stones, thin strips of parchment inked with words too faded to read. She lifts a stone the size of a dove's egg and rolls it between her palms. "People forget that even a pebble carries memory," she says. The scholars debate whether stones can hold prayers. Let them debate. She offers you a piece of parchment. "Write," she urges. "Not a name, not a plea, just a thought you wish the night to keep." From within her cloak she produces a reed pen and a small pot of ink that gleams like melted moonlight. You dip the nib and after a moment's hesitation, write a single phrase in your own language, something only you will understand. The ink settles dark and permanent against the pale surface. The woman takes the parchment without reading it, and folds it into a small square. She places it beneath the pebble on the altar. "When the sun rises," she whispers, "the words will fade, but the memory will remain in the stone. The wind will carry it to the river, and the river will carry it to the sea. That is how we keep love moving." A breeze stirs the ivy above, releasing a shower of dew that catches the moonlight like falling sparks. The woman lifts her face to the drops and closes her eyes, a gesture so serene you find yourself doing the same. Cool moisture dots your skin, and for a heartbeat it feels as if the orchard itself has blessed you. When she opens her eyes again, they glint with quiet amusement. "They say Venus once walked this grove," she says. "Some believe her footsteps left a fragrance in the soil. Others argue it was only the gardeners with their citrus trees." She smiles. Either way, the scent remains. She moves to the edge of the courtyard, where a narrow channel of water flows toward the river. From her tray she takes a handful of petals, rose violet and a single sliver of dried orange, and scatters them across the stream. The petals swirl, catching reflections of moon and star before disappearing into the dark current. "Every offering travels farther than we imagine," she says. "Historians will write of empires and wars, but the river will remember the petals." You follow her gaze as the last petal drifts out of sight. The quiet is profound, broken only by the soft rush of water. "Do you believe the gods listen?" you ask. She tilts her head, considering. "Perhaps, perhaps not. But the act of offering teaches the heart to listen, and that is enough." Her voice is so steady, so sure, that you feel the truth settle inside you like a slow tide. From a pocket of her cloak, she draws a small cluster of dried citrus peel and holds it out. "For your journey," she says, "to keep the scent of this night alive when daylight tries to steal it." The peel is warm from her hand and releases a fragrance both sharp and sweet. You accept it with a quiet nod, tucking it beside the orange blossom and the vial of rose oil already hidden in your cloak. She studies you for a long moment, the moonlight soft on her face. "Remember," she says finally, "that every love, every desire is part of a larger story. We are only pages in a book the stars have been writing for eons. Our task is to leave the margins fragrant." She smiles once more, then steps back into the shadowed ivy. When you glance again, she is gone, as if the night itself has folded her away. You remain by the altar, the scent of citrus and myrtle surrounding you like a quiet anthem. The marble is cool beneath your fingertips, the carved figures of Venus and Mars worn smooth but still tender. You imagine the countless hands that have traced these same lines. Lovers, travelers, skeptics, dreamers, all leaving small fragments of themselves behind. The scholars will debate their meanings for centuries, but tonight, under this forgiving moon, meaning feels both infinite and unnecessary. Eventually you rise, the parchment's ghost still warm in your memory. The path leading away from the courtyard glows faintly, as though the moonlight itself has chosen to guide you. You walk with measured steps, every sound amplified, the distant river, the whisper of leaves, the quiet echo of your own breath. With each step, the night feels less like a backdrop and more like a companion, carrying your thoughts the way the river carries petals, gently, endlessly, without question. As you near the orchard's heart once more, you glance back. The altar remains bathed in silver, the pebble resting calmly atop your folded parchment. For an instant you think you see the faintest shimmer of light around it, perhaps just the moon, perhaps something more. Either way, you know the offering has been accepted, and the story of this night will travel onward, carried by water, wind, and the patient memory of stone. The silver glow of the altar fades behind you as you return to the winding path, the citrus peel in your pocket, releasing tiny sparks of fragrance with each movement. The orchard seems changed. Quieter, yes, but also denser, as though the trees have drawn closer together to keep your secrets. Their trunks are black silhouettes against the slow fading moon, and their fruit glimmers like pocketfuls of captured sunrise. A soft mist has settled low over the ground, curling around your ankles like a sleepy cat. You pause to listen. The Tiber's murmur is softer now, a hush rather than a song, and the occasional trill of a nightingale sounds far away, like a dream you're already forgetting. Somewhere in the orchard a branch creaks, and a single orange drops to the earth with a muted thud. The sound is startling in the stillness, and you can't help but grin. Nature's gentle reminder that even in mystery, gravity remains non-negotiable. The path splits at a weathered stone marker. One trail slopes toward the river, the other into a grove of taller, darker trees. You choose the grove, drawn by a faint glow that flickers between the trunks. The air here is cooler, carrying the scent of damp earth and crushed pine. Your sandals sink slightly into the mossy ground, and the mist thickens until it feels like you're walking through a cloud spun from moonlight. The glow resolves into a cluster of lanterns hung from low branches, their paper shades painted with curling vines and tiny birds. Beneath them, a small group of people sits in a circle. Men and women, young and old, their garments a patchwork of colors, indigo, saffron, russet, like a living mosaic. At their center burns a modest fire contained in a shallow bronze bowl. The flames are low and steady, casting long shadows that dance across their faces. A man with a beard the color of midnight looks up first. "A late traveler," he says in Latin as smooth as olive oil. "Come, the circle is open." The others nod in welcome, making space without breaking their quiet rhythm. You step into the ring and feel the warmth of the fire settle across your skin, a gentle counterpoint to the cool mist. A woman with silver hair holds a clay cup, steam curling from its rim. She offers it to you. "Warm honey and herbs," she explains. "Good for travelers who've gathered more questions than answers." The cup's heat seeps into your palms, and the aroma, sweet, sharp, faintly bitter, grounds you like a soft hand on your shoulder. The group sits in companionable silence for a time, listening to the fire pop softly. Then the bearded man begins to speak, his voice low and deliberate. He tells of a Roman midwife who carried sachets of mint and rue, believing they could guide the soul of a newborn safely into the world. Some said she was a healer, others whispered she was a witch. The scholars, he adds with a wry smile, still argue whether her remedies were science or sorcery. Perhaps they were both. The group murmurs approval, as though the story is an old friend returning for a visit. Another member, a young man with eyes the color of dark wine, shares a tale of sailors who scented their sails with crushed citrus to keep spirits and pests at bay during long voyages. They claimed the aroma could calm storms, he says, or at least make the storm smell better. Laughter ripples gently through the circle, and you find yourself joining in, the sound rising like sparks into the night. The silver-haired woman passes the clay cup around, each person taking a sip before handing it on. When it reaches you again, the drink is still warm. It tastes of honey and thyme, with a fleeting note of orange peel. Comfort in liquid form. As the firelight flickers, stories continue, of lovers who carved vows into fig trees, of musicians who believed certain chords could make the moon linger, of gardeners who swore that a single drop of dew at dawn held the power to mend a broken heart. Each tale flows into the next, forming a tapestry of quiet wonders. No one interrupts, no one rushes. It feels less like a conversation and more like a collective dream. At last, the bearded man turns to you. "Every traveler carries a story," he says softly. "What will you give the night?" His eyes hold no demand, only invitation. You think of the priest with his bronze owl, the scribe sending love letters to the wind, the lyre player whose music rippled like water, the woman who taught you that flowers and fruit share the same branch. You think of the parchment you left under the pebble, and the orange blossom tucked against your heart. The words rise before you realize you're speaking. I've learned that desire travels farther than we can measure, and memory holds what time cannot. A hush follows, warm and approving. The silver-haired woman reaches across the fire and lays a hand on your wrist. "Then the night has given you its best lesson," she whispers, "and you have given it back." One by one, the others rise, each bowing slightly before slipping away into the mist. The bearded man remains only long enough to add a single log to the fire. "Stay as long as you like," he says. The circle is never truly closed. Then he too vanishes among the trees, his steps soundless. You sit alone, the fire crackling gently, the clay cup cooling beside you. The mist curls around the lanterns, softening their light until they resemble distant stars. The air is rich with the perfume of herbs, wood smoke, and the faint, eternal hint of citrus. You feel neither lonely nor tired, only present, utterly and completely here. Eventually you rise. The path back through the grove glows faintly, as though the lanterns have stretched their light to guide you. As you walk, the mist thins and the orchard reappears, fruit gleaming like coins scattered across dark velvet. Overhead, the moon dips lower, its silver edge brushing the tops of the trees. You pause at the edge of the grove and look back. The lanterns are nearly hidden now, their glow softened to a gentle haze. You catch the scent of orange blossom once more, sweeter and more vivid than before, as if the night itself is offering a final benediction. The circle may have dispersed, but its warmth lingers. You carry it with you, the honeyed drink on your tongue, the echo of shared laughter, the quiet certainty that every story offered to the night becomes part of something larger. The scholars will argue forever about whether such gatherings were myth or memory. But tonight you know the truth. Some histories are written not in books but in breaths, in scents, in the simple act of sitting together until the fire's last ember fades into dawn. The mist parts as you step from the grove, and suddenly the orchard opens wide again, silvered by a moon now sliding toward the western horizon. The air feels different, lighter, touched by the first cool breath of approaching dawn. You pause to let your eyes adjust, inhaling the steady perfume of oranges and the softer undercurrent of laurel and rosemary. Somewhere behind you a lantern sputters, its brief hiss carried like a whispered farewell. You follow a narrow track that curves toward the river, each step sinking slightly into soil dark and damp with night dew. The Tiber's voice grows clearer, a deep, unhurried murmur, as though it has been waiting to tell you a story of its own. The sound blends with your heartbeat until you can't tell which came first. Along the path, wild violets bloom in improbable clusters, their tiny faces reflecting the faintest traces of starlight. You bend to touch a petal. It's cool and delicate, leaving a trace of fragrance on your fingertips that clings like a secret. Ahead, a low stone bridge arches over a tributary stream. Its surface is worn smooth, and faint carvings, circles, spirals, and the occasional fish decorate the parapet. You step onto the bridge, the stones damp beneath your sandals, and lean over the side. The water glints like molten pewter, carrying fragments of petals from upstream. Rose, violet, and a lone curl of orange peel that spins lazily before continuing its journey. You wonder if it's the very piece you watched the woman scatter earlier, now traveling toward a sea it will never name. A soft rustle draws your gaze to the far end of the bridge. An elderly man stands there, leaning on a staff of olive wood polished to a gentle shine. His cloak is a deep indigo that nearly blends with the night. He smiles as though greeting an old friend. "You walk with the night's patience," he says in Latin, his voice smooth but carrying the gravel of many years. Not many travelers remember how. You cross to meet him. Up close you see that his staff is carved with tiny figures, dolphins leaping among waves, a moon rising over hills. "This bridge," he says, tapping the stone with the staff's tip, "has heard more vows than the Senate has laws. Lovers, rebels, poets, they all come here eventually." He chuckles softly. The historians quarrel about whether the carvings are warnings or blessings. I say they are simply memories etched in stone. He gestures toward the water. "Would you like to send a thought downstream?" From a pouch at his belt, he draws a small scrap of parchment and a stick of charcoal. "No names, no addresses." The river knows where to carry it. You think of the indigo packet, the clay vial of rose and lemon, the dried citrus peel, all the night's small gifts tucked within your cloak. Taking the parchment, you crouch and write a single sentence, something too private to speak aloud. The charcoal smudges your fingertips, grounding you in the act. When you're done, the old man takes the parchment, folds it carefully, and releases it to the current. It floats a moment, catching moonlight like a tiny lantern, then slips beneath the bridge and disappears. "The Tiber remembers," he says simply, "long after marble crumbles and empires forget their own names." He leans on his staff and studies the sky, where the first faint hints of dawn, pale rose and ash gray, begin to soften the darkness. "Night is almost over," he murmurs, "but the story continues whether we wake to hear it or not." You walk together along the bridge, the silence between you companionable. He tells you almost casually about ancient festivals once held on these banks, celebrations of fertility where dancers crowned with myrtle leapt over bonfires to ensure love's endurance. "Some claim it was pure superstition," he says with a wry smile. "Others insist the leap strengthened the heart. Scholars still debate which interpretation is less boring." He laughs quietly, and you find yourself laughing too, the sound mingling with the river's endless murmur. At the far side of the bridge, a small shrine waits beneath an arch of flowering vines. A single clay lamp burns there, its flame steady despite the breeze. The old man pauses and bows his head. "For travelers," he says, "and for those who travel only in memory." He invites you to add your own gesture. You pluck a violet from the path, lay it beside the lamp, and feel a soft warmth rise in your chest. Gratitude without words. The sky lightens further, the deep blues giving way to shades of pearl and faint gold. Birds begin to stir in the orchard behind you, their first tentative calls like a rehearsal for the coming day. The old man watches the horizon. Every dawn is a reminder, he says, that love is not a single night but an endless cycle. Bloom and fruit, departure and return. He glances at you with eyes bright as riverlight. The scholars, of course, will argue whether love is eternal or merely persistent. Let them argue. We live it. He straightens, leaning less heavily on his staff now. Our paths part here, he tells you, but the night has already given you what it came to give. He nods toward your cloak, where the orange blossom, the parchment memories, and the quiet scents of rose and lemon travel with you. Carry them into daylight. They will remind you to listen when the world grows loud. You thank him, though words feel small against the magnitude of the night. He simply smiles, taps his staff against the bridge once more, a soft note like a heartbeat, and turns back toward the shrine. His figure blends with the dim light until he seems woven into the fading mist itself. You stand alone as the first rays of dawn stretch across the river. The water catches the new light, turning from silver to soft gold. Somewhere downstream, the parchment carrying your unspoken thought drifts toward the sea. You breathe in the cool morning air and realize that the orchard behind you has quieted into a gentle hush, as if satisfied with what has been shared. Slowly, you begin the walk back toward the city. The path feels familiar now, every stone and leaf imprinted with the night's quiet lessons. Birds call in soft choruses, and the breeze carries the faint perfume of citrus and violets. The moon, nearly gone, lingers just long enough to wink a final farewell. You do not hurry. Each step is deliberate, a continuation of the stories you've gathered. The priest and his bronze owl, the scribe and his letter to the wind, the musician at the pool, the woman scattering petals, the circle of storytellers, and now the old man who entrusted your words to the river. Together they form a mosaic more enduring than marble, a living history of desire, memory, and gentle defiance against the forgetfulness of time. As you near the orchard's edge, the city begins to stir. Faint sounds of merchants setting up stalls, the distant clatter of a cart on cobblestones, the soft rise of human voices ready to bargain with the new day. Yet you carry the hush of the night within you, a quiet certainty that no morning noise can erase. The scholars may debate causes and meanings, but you have walked the path where petals meet river, where words dissolve into water, where love and memory flow without end. You pause once more to look back. The orchard stands serene in the dim light, its blossoms glowing faintly, as if holding onto the moon for just a heartbeat longer. The breeze shifts, and the scent of citrus reaches you one last time, bright, warm, and patient. You breathe it in, and with that breath the night's long story settles gently into your own. The first blush of sunrise begins to stretch across the horizon, a thin ribbon of rose and gold unfurling above the Tiber. You linger at the orchard's edge, reluctant to leave, as if the air itself has woven a net of fragrance around you. Orange blossom, laurel mint, the faint trace of smoke from the circle's dying fire. Each breath carries the memory of every encounter, the priest's bronze owl, the scribe's whispered letter, the musician's quiet chords, the woman's bell, the old man's staff tapping stone. You feel them all layered inside you like the rings of a tree. Ahead the city stirs. Roosters crow from distant courtyards. Merchants rattle open their shutters. Yet here in the last hush of night, time bends, patient as a cat waiting at a door. You follow a narrow path bordered by low walls of tufa stone, the porous rock dark with dew. Ferns grow in the cracks, their fronds trembling in the early breeze. A single drop of water slides down a frond's spine and falls soundlessly to the ground. You think of the old man's words, the Tiber remembers. Perhaps even the stones remember. The path dips toward a small plaza half hidden by cypress trees. At its center stands a circular basin of marble where water gushes from the mouth of a carved lion. The basin is ringed with low benches, some chipped and moss-covered, others smooth from countless visitors. Two women in simple tunics draw water into clay jars, their quiet conversation blending with the fountain's music. They glance at you, nod politely, and return to their task. You nod back, feeling like a guest in their dawn ritual. A faint aroma of baking bread drifts from a nearby alley. It twines through the citrus and mint still clinging to your cloak, a new thread in the night's tapestry. Your stomach growls softly, an almost comic reminder that you are, after all, still human. You follow the scent to a small bakery, just opening its wooden shutters. Warm yellow light spills onto the cobblestones. Inside, an elderly baker moves with easy precision, sliding rounds of dough into a brick oven. His apron is dusted with flour like fresh snow. He notices you in the doorway and smiles. "Early walker," he says in Latin tinged with the accent of the southern provinces. "The night kept you busy?" You nod, and he gestures to a tray of small honey cakes cooling on a wooden board. "First batch of the day. Try one before the sun steals the sweetness." He breaks a cake in half and offers it to you. Steam curls upward, carrying the scent of honey and orange zest. You take a bite. The cake is warm and tender, the honey rich but balanced by the bright spark of citrus. It tastes of the orchard, of every quiet blessing the night bestowed. The baker watches your expression with quiet pride. "My grandmother's recipe," he says. "Some say it began as an offering to Venus. Others claim it was invented by sailors who missed the taste of home." He shrugs. "Either way, it keeps people coming back." He winks. "Historians still argue about that too." You laugh, the sound surprising in the still drowsy street. He wraps a second cake in parchment and presses it into your hand. "For the road," he says. "A journey is better when it ends with something sweet." You thank him, tucking the parcel into your cloak alongside the night's other treasures. The baker nods once more and turns back to his oven, humming a tune that might be as old as the city itself. Outside, the sky brightens by degrees, the pale gold of morning washing the buildings in soft light. You wander through narrow lanes where ivy climbs the stone walls and small balconies overflow with pots of basil and rosemary. Cats stretch across doorsteps, blinking lazily at the new day. A few early merchants sweep their thresholds. The scrape of brooms a gentle percussion beneath the awakening bird song. Your path leads toward a low archway where a trickle of water spills from a niche in the wall. A woman in a dark cloak stands there, filling a cup and sipping slowly. She notices you and tilts her head in greeting. "The night leaves its mark," she says quietly, as if she can see the orchard in your eyes. Her voice is soft, yet it carries an authority that makes you pause. She steps aside, allowing you to drink. The water is cold and startlingly clear, a rush of freshness that chases away the last threads of sleep. "They say this spring was blessed by a minor goddess of memory," she remarks. "Travelers drink and remember what should not be forgotten." She traces a finger along the stone lip of the fountain, where faint etchings of vines spiral outward. Scholars debate which goddess, of course. They always do, but the water remembers without needing a name. You sip again, and for an instant the night floods back. The priest's quiet grin, the scribe's wax tablet, the trio's music, the mint on your tongue, the bells echo in the amphitheater. The memories feel sharper now, less like dreams and more like possessions you can hold. The woman smiles knowingly. "See," she says, "the spring does its work." Before you can reply, she pulls her cloak tighter and steps into the brightening street. Her departure leaves behind only the sound of water and a faint trace of sandalwood. You linger a moment longer, letting the spring's chill settle in your chest like a final gift from the night. Continuing along the lane, you pass beneath an aqueduct where sunlight begins to catch in the arches, turning the ancient stone to gold. Pigeons flutter overhead, their wings scattering droplets from last night's mist. You slow your pace, savoring the contrast between the city's awakening bustle and the lingering calm of the orchard still humming in your senses. Every sound, the clop of a mule's hooves, the distant call of a vendor, the rustle of laundry being unfurled, arrives softened, as though cushioned by the memories you carry. Finally, you reach a small overlook where the Tiber spreads wide beneath the rising sun. The water now gleams bronze and copper, no longer silver but still endlessly patient. Boats rock gently against their moorings, their sails stirring in the dawn breeze. You lean against the stone parapet, feeling the warmth of the first sunlight on your face. The orange blossom in your cloak releases a sudden burst of fragrance, bright and insistent, as if reminding you of the night's quiet covenant. You watch the river a long while, thinking of the parchment the old man sent downstream, of petals and whispered vows, of stories traded beneath lantern light. You understand now that the night was not simply a sequence of encounters, but a single, unbroken ritual of memory and desire. A ceremony as old as the city and as endless as the river itself. Behind you, Rome is waking in earnest. Market cries, the clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the cheerful scold of children chasing one another through the streets. Yet none of it disturbs the quiet you carry. You feel the weight of the orange blossom, the vial of rose and lemon, the dried citrus peel, the indigo packet of petals, a collection of moments that are more than souvenirs. They are proof that even in an empire obsessed with power and conquest, there is a softer history, one written in fragrance and whispers, in offerings and shared silences. The sun climbs higher, gilding the rooftops and turning the Tiber to liquid fire. You take a slow breath, letting the warmth settle into your bones. The night has ended, but its story lingers, vivid and fragrant, a quiet rebellion against forgetting. You turn from the river at last, stepping into the day with the orchard's calm folded neatly inside you. An invisible charm no daylight can erase. Sunlight now spills across the rooftops like molten bronze, and the streets of Rome begin to buzz with life. Yet you keep to the quiet edges, following narrow alleys where the night's fragrance still lingers in doorways and shaded courtyards. The orange blossom in your cloak releases a soft note each time you move, a private reminder that the orchard remains with you even as the day asserts itself. You wander past shuttered shops and small gardens tucked between stone buildings. Here a woman tends basil in a clay pot, humming a tune older than the city walls. There a pair of children chase a wooden hoop, their laughter bright and unguarded. Merchants sweep dust from their thresholds, while cats stretch luxuriously in the growing warmth. Rome wakes like a great creature stirring from a nap, slow, graceful, unbothered by the centuries stacked in its bones. At a quiet intersection, you notice a modest archway draped with flowering vines. A sign carved into the lintel shows two intertwined doves, their beaks touching. Curious, you step through and find a small courtyard shaded by fig trees. In its center stands a shrine of pale marble, simple but elegant. Offerings rest at its base, clusters of fresh flowers, tiny amphorae of oil, a few bronze coins that glint in the morning light. A young acolyte kneels there, arranging the petals of a rose with deliberate care. He looks up and smiles, his eyes calm and steady. "Welcome, traveler," he says, voice soft enough to blend with the rustle of fig leaves. "You have walked a long night. The Shrine of Concordia keeps peace for those who seek it." He gestures toward a low bench of polished stone. "Sit if you wish. The morning is kind." You settle onto the bench, grateful for the cool stone beneath you. The acolyte continues his quiet work, lighting a small oil lamp and placing it beside the offerings. A thin ribbon of fragrant smoke curls upward, carrying notes of sandalwood and myrrh. "This place was built," he explains, "to honor harmony between lovers, families, even rival cities. Some say the goddess still visits at dawn." He glances at the rising sun and smiles faintly. Historians argue whether that's poetry or politics. Perhaps both. He pours a few drops of oil into a shallow bowl, the liquid catching the light like amber glass. "Would you care to add something of your own? A thought? A memory?" From within his robe, he produces a small square of parchment and a reed pen. "Write what you would keep safe," he says. "No one will read it but the morning." You think of the long night behind you, the priest's bronze owl, the scribe's letter to the wind, the musician by the pool, the circle of storytellers, the old man on the bridge. You think of petals and bells and the endless patient river. Taking the pen, you write a single word, a name perhaps, or maybe just a feeling. The ink dries almost instantly in the warming air. The acolyte accepts the parchment and places it beneath a small stone at the shrine's base. "The goddess of harmony favors those who honor both memory and change," Ellie says. "May your journey carry both." He bows his head, a gesture neither grand nor ceremonial but deeply sincere. You linger, watching the smoke spiral upward and vanish into the brightening sky. The courtyard seems to breathe with you, each inhale carrying the scent of figs and warm stone, each exhale a quiet promise of balance. When you finally rise, the acolyte offers a simple blessing. "Walk in peace, and let peace walk with you." You nod, feeling the words settle like a gentle weight across your shoulders. Back on the street, the city is fully awake. Vendors call out prices for bread and olives. A cart rumbles past laden with amphorae of wine. Yet you move through it all as though wrapped in a thin veil of the orchard's calm. Every sound arrives softened, the clatter of hooves, the laughter of children, even the occasional bark of a dog. The night's lessons have not faded, they have merely changed color, like moonlight transforming into morning. You follow the curve of a narrow lane that slopes toward the forum. Marble columns rise ahead, their tops catching the sun in bright flashes. A faint breeze carries the scent of baking bread mingled with citrus and resin. As you walk, you pass a group of philosophers already deep in debate, their gestures animated, their voices rising and falling like a lively tide. You catch fragments of argument: virtue, justice, the nature of love. One man waves a scroll for emphasis, nearly toppling a neighbor's basket of figs. The others laugh, and the debate continues with undiminished fervor. Scholars, you think, forever arguing while the world simply breathes. You pause at the edge of the forum where the ruins of older temples stand like quiet witnesses. Sunlight pours through broken columns, creating a mosaic of light and shadow on the worn stones. A pair of doves land on a nearby pedestal, their feathers catching the morning glow. They coo softly to each other, unbothered by the bustle around them. Their gentle companionship seems like an echo of the night's theme. Love persisting in the everyday, undramatic but profound. From a nearby market stall, a merchant calls to you, offering slices of fresh pomegranate. You accept one, the juice bursting bright and tart across your tongue. It reminds you of the river's sparkle, of petals drifting in moonlight, of the quiet gifts exchanged beneath the orchard trees. The merchant grins at your appreciative nod and turns to the next customer, his voice cheerful and unhurried. You continue toward a small hill at the forum's edge, where a lone cypress stands sentinel. The climb is brief, and at the top you find a view that sweeps across the city. Tiled roofs glowing in the sun, the distant shimmer of the Tiber, the faint outline of hills beyond. You stand there a long time, the breeze tugging gently at your cloak, the orange blossom's fragrance rising once more, as if to remind you that the night's story is still alive within you. Below, the city hums, markets opening, children calling, priests chanting their morning prayers. Yet even amid this chorus of day, you feel the soft counterpoint of everything you gathered in the dark, the whispered vows, the shared silences, the lessons folded into scent and sound. They do not compete with the daylight. They enrich it, like a hidden harmony beneath a familiar melody. You close your eyes and breathe, letting the memories settle deeper. The orchard, the river, the countless voices of the night, they are not fading. They are becoming part of you, as permanent as the scent of orange blossom carried on a morning breeze. And as the sun climbs higher, you understand that the journey was never about leaving the night behind. It was about carrying its quiet magic forward, a secret charm you will bear long after the scholars have finished their endless debates. When you finally open your eyes, the city stretches before you, bright and alive, ready for the day's noise and clamor. But within you, the orchard still whispers, and the river still remembers. You turn from the hilltop with a small smile, the soft weight of the night's gifts tucked safely into your heart, and begin the slow descent into the waking world. The descent from the hill feels like stepping through layers of time. Each cobblestone underfoot seems to hold a faint echo of the night. Lantern glow, whispered stories, the quiet brush of petals on water. Morning sunlight streams between the ancient buildings, yet it lands softly, as though careful not to break the spell that still clings to you. The orange blossom hidden in your cloak releases a small sigh of fragrance with every stride, a private signal that the orchard walks with you still. You follow a narrow street that bends past crumbling walls and modest doorways. Laundry hangs above like banners of everyday triumph, white linen sheets, a child's tunic dyed pale indigo, a scarf patterned with small green vines. They sway gently in the new breeze, catching beams of light like sails ready for some small domestic voyage. From a nearby courtyard comes the rhythmic sound of a pestle grinding herbs. The aroma of basil and garlic wafts out, warm and welcoming, reminding you that the simplest rituals, making a meal, tending a garden, can carry their own kind of devotion. The lane opens into a small square where a public fountain sings. Children chase each other around the marble basin, their laughter bright against the low murmur of adult conversation. A woman in a saffron shawl leans over the water to fill an amphora, her movements deliberate, almost ceremonial. You pause to watch as the early sun paints everything in a gentle gold, turning the fountain's spray into drifting shards of light. For a moment, the scene feels timeless. A quiet chorus of daily life that might have unfolded exactly the same 1,000 mornings ago. A voice calls softly from a shaded archway. An elderly man in a plain grey tunic beckons with a slow wave. "Traveller," he says in Latin touched with a rural cadence. "The morning market begins, but first come see the garden." He gestures down a side corridor lined with faded frescoes of vines and birds. Curious, you step inside. The corridor opens into a hidden courtyard bathed in slanted sunlight. Vines climb the stone walls, their leaves trembling in the mild breeze. At the center stands a raised bed of herbs and flowers, rosemary, thyme, lavender, and bright clusters of marigold. The scent is immediate and layered, resinous, sweet, a touch of earth still cool from the night. Bees drift lazily among the blossoms, moving with the same unhurried grace that has followed you since dusk. The old man kneels beside a patch of mint, his fingers deft as he gathers sprigs into a woven basket. "My family has tended this place since before the Republic faltered," he explains. "Some say these herbs were once offerings to Concordia. Others claim they flavored the feasts of forgotten senators. Historians debate naturally. His smile crinkles the corners of his eyes, but the garden remembers better than the scrolls. He offers you a sprig of mint. Its cool fragrance bursts between your fingertips, bright and grounding. "Take it," he says. Mint clears the path between memory and breath. You tuck it into your cloak beside the orange blossom and the parchment from the shrine. The collection of scents, citrus, rose, mint, blends into a quiet symphony that feels both ancient and intimately yours. The gardener continues his gentle harvest, speaking of the seasons as if they were old friends. "In spring, the rosemary hums with bees so loudly you cannot hear your own thoughts. In midsummer, the marigolds glow even at midnight, a lantern for wandering spirits." He chuckles. Scholars argue about that too, of course. They would measure the hum of bees if they could. When he finishes, he stands and wipes his hands on his tunic. "The market waits," he says. "But remember, every leaf carries a story. Breathe it and you breathe the past." He bows slightly, a gesture of quiet respect, and returns to his garden as if he has always been there and always will be. You leave the courtyard and rejoin the waking city. The streets now pulse with morning energy. Merchants arranging baskets of figs and olives, potters displaying freshly fired cups that still hold the kiln's warmth, children darting between stalls like sparrows. The smell of baking bread mingles with the sharp tang of crushed herbs. Yet even amid the bustle, a hush lingers around you, a pocket of the orchard's calm traveling with each step. A broad avenue leads you toward the old forum, where marble columns rise like sunlit sentinels. Here the air carries the low murmur of public life, senators debating, traders bargaining, performers tuning their instruments for the day's amusements. You pause near a column etched with faint graffiti, hearts intertwined, names half faded. The marks feel like a quiet echo of the night's lessons. Love inscribed not for history's approval, but for its own enduring pleasure. An orator stands on a small dais, reciting a poem to a growing crowd. His voice rises and falls like the Tiber's current, recounting a myth of Venus disguising herself as a mortal to walk the city's streets. Some listeners nod in recognition, others smile at the familiar tale. "The scholars," he says with a wink mid-verse, "still dispute whether the goddess truly walked among us. But perhaps she walks here now." Laughter ripples through the gathering, and for an instant you feel the orchard's fragrance again, as if the goddess herself had indeed brushed past. Drawn by the sound of a lyre, you turn down a side street and find a young musician seated on a low step. He strums a melody so soft and slow, it feels like a continuation of the night's music. Coins glint in a small bowl at his feet, but he plays not for profit, so much as for the sheer pleasure of filling the morning with gentle sound. You linger, letting the notes seep into you, a bridge between the hushed hours before dawn and the bright day unfolding. Eventually you reach a terrace that overlooks the Tiber once more. The river is no longer silver, but a rich copper reflecting the full rise of the sun. Boats drift lazily, their sails catching the light like giant petals. You rest your hands on the warm stone balustrade and close your eyes. Beneath the city's clamor, you can still hear the river's deep voice carrying the offerings, the whispers, the laughter of the night you've lived. You breathe deeply and sense the gifts you carry, the mint's sharp clarity, The orange blossom's sweet persistence, the parchment's quiet promise, the faint trace of honey cake on your tongue. They are more than souvenirs. They are a map of memory, proof that the slow hours of night have become part of you. As you stand there, a thought settles like the final chord of a song. The journey was never about finding one secret or one shrine. It was about discovering how desire and memory weave through everything, gardens and rivers, markets and music, even the morning air. The scholars may debate origins, but you know the truth lies in these small, enduring connections. The sun climbs higher, the city brightens, but the calm of the orchard remains within you, steady as a heartbeat. You turn from the river with a quiet smile, ready to step fully into the day, carrying the entire night, its scents, its stories, its gentle defiance of time, folded into the simplest act of breathing. The warmth of the rising sun now settles fully across your shoulders, and the city's rhythm grows louder. Wheels creak against cobblestones. Vendors call out the morning's bargains. A blacksmith's hammer sings its metallic cadence somewhere beyond the forum. Yet beneath the busy melody of Rome, you still hear the subtler music of the night, the whisper of leaves, the hush of river water carrying petals downstream, the soft pulse of a lyre that might still echo in some hidden courtyard. You move through the crowd as though wrapped in a veil of quiet. The orange blossom and mint in your cloak release their mingled fragrance each time you turn, creating a private pocket of orchard air that the city's clamor cannot breach. Faces blur into motion around you. Merchants balancing amphorae, children darting with crusts of bread, officials in crisp white togas discussing matters of law. Their world feels sharp and bright, yet you carry the softness of moonlight within you, a counterpoint that steadies every step. A broad avenue slopes toward the Capitoline Hill, and you follow it, drawn by the sight of ancient temples crowned with morning light. Statues of forgotten deities cast long shadows across the paving stones, their marble faces serene, despite centuries of debate over their meaning. You pause before one figure, a woman carved with a cluster of fruit in her arms, her expression calm but playful. A passerby notices your gaze and offers a tidbit in passing Latin. Pomona, guardian of orchards. He smiles knowingly. The scholars argue whether she truly kept fruit safe or merely inspired gardeners to do so. His footsteps fade before you can reply, leaving only the statue's quiet amusement. Beyond the hill lies a small garden terrace overlooking the city. Here a handful of early risers stand in thoughtful silence, watching the sun climb higher. A young mother rocks her infant gently. A pair of travelers share a loaf of bread, breaking it into even pieces. You join them at the railing, the stone warm against your palms. From this vantage, the Tiber glints like a golden thread weaving through the city, carrying the memory of everything you offered to its waters. The scent of baking bread mingles with the faint sweetness of distant blossoms, and for a moment the entire city feels like an extension of the orchard. Each street a branch, each rooftop a leaf catching sunlight. A soft voice at your side draws your attention. An elderly woman in a cloak the color of faded saffron stands with a basket of figs. "First harvest of the day," she says, offering one with a gentle smile. "The fruit is warm from the sun and yields easily beneath your fingers. Its flesh is honey sweet, the flavor so vivid it feels like a continuation of the night's gifts. These trees," she tells you, "were planted by my grandmother. Some say the first figs grew from a goddess's tears. Others claim they sprang from the footprints of a wandering hero. Scholars, of course, will never agree." She chuckles, the sound as soft as the fruit's skin. You eat slowly, savoring the richness that seems to hold both dusk and dawn. The woman nods in quiet approval. "Take one for later," she says, placing another fig in your palm. Her journey tastes better when it remembers where it began. You thank her, slipping the fruit into your cloak beside the mint and orange blossom. The collection of scents and textures, sweet fig, sharp mint, lingering citrus, forms a gentle mosaic of the night and morning interwoven. Leaving the terrace, you descend a stairway cut into the hillside. The steps are worn smooth, and in some places ancient carvings of vines and birds peek through the stone like faint memories. At the base, a shaded colonnade opens into a marketplace already alive with color. Stalls overflow with pomegranates, olives, amphorae of honey, and bolts of dyed cloth in indigo, russet, and teal. The air hums with barter and laughter, yet you move through it at your own measured pace, letting the night's calm guide you. A storyteller holds court near a pillar draped with garlands. Children gather at his feet, while adults linger at the edges, pretending not to listen too closely. His voice rises above the market din, recounting a tale of lovers who once crossed the city, disguised as humble merchants to meet beneath an orange tree in secret. Some say they planted that tree themselves, he declares, eyes twinkling. Others insist it sprang overnight, a gift from the gods. Scholars naturally debate the likelihood of both. Laughter ripples through the crowd. You smile, recognizing the familiar refrain of uncertainty that has followed every tale of the night. A sudden breeze stirs the market, lifting the edges of awnings and sending a fresh wave of citrus scent through the air. For a heartbeat, you are back in the orchard. Moonlight on your skin, petals drifting across the Tiber. You close your eyes and breathe deeply. The memory is so immediate it feels less like remembrance and more like a second present, layered gently over the first. When you open your eyes, the storyteller has finished and the market has shifted around you. A musician tunes a small harp near a fountain. A baker passes out samples of honeyed bread. You linger for a while, tasting an olive here, a slice of cheese there, each flavor carrying echoes of the night's quiet lessons, sweetness balanced by salt, tradition mingling with improvisation, the old and the new woven together like threads in a tapestry. Eventually, you find yourself at the market's far edge, where a narrow alley leads back toward the river. You follow it until the sound of commerce fades, replaced once again by the deep, patient murmur of water. The Tiber stretches before you, now a sheet of liquid gold beneath the noon sun. Boats glide slowly across its surface, their sails catching the light like captured clouds. You lean against the stone embankment and watch, remembering the parchment you sent downstream and the petals you watched swirl into the current. Somewhere out there, those small offerings continue their journey, carrying the night's stories to places you will never see. A cool breeze rises off the water, lifting the edge of your cloak and releasing another subtle wave of fragrance. Mint and orange, fig and honey. You realize that the orchard is no longer a single place behind you. It is everywhere you carry it. Each scent, each memory, each quiet exchange has become part of the day's unfolding. As the afternoon sun warms the stones beneath your feet, you understand that the night's pilgrimage was never about finding a single shrine or unlocking a secret. It was about learning how memory clings to the senses. The taste of a honey cake, the scent of citrus on a warrior's armor, the sound of petals touching a river's surface. The scholars may debate their meanings, but you have lived them, and that is enough. You turn from the river at last, ready to step fully into the bright expanse of day. Yet the quiet magic of the night remains, steady as a heartbeat, fragrant as a hidden grove, woven into every breath you take. The city bustles around you, alive and unrepentant. But you walk with the orchard's calm folded deep within, a secret charm that will guide you long after the scholars have finished arguing, and the river has carried your offerings to the endless sea. The afternoon sun drapes the riverbank in honeyed light as you follow the slow curve of the Tiber. Fishermen sit with lines dangling into the gleaming water, their straw hats tilted just so, as if they too are half asleep in the warmth. Children skip pebbles that leap and vanish with tiny splashes, laughter carrying across the wide current. You move among them like a quiet breeze, the jasmine in your cloak sending soft bursts of sweetness each time you turn. The scent mingles with the briny tang of olives and the faint metallic whisper of the river itself. A stone stairway leads upward to a raised promenade shaded by plane trees. Their leaves, already tinged with late summer gold, rustle with the hush of distant applause. You climb slowly, pausing at the top where the city stretches behind you like a living fresco. The rooftops glow warm ochre and deep terracotta. The market squares shimmer with the movement of hundreds of lives. Yet here, above the noise, a hush lingers, a reminder that the orchard's calm can rise even in the blaze of afternoon. At the far end of the promenade, you find a small amphitheater, half in ruin but still proud in its quiet dignity. Broken columns lean like old friends against each other, and weeds sprout bravely between the stones. A group of young actors rehearses in the shadowed center, their voices carrying fragments of ancient dialogue. You pause at the edge, letting their words wash over you like a tide of sound older than the empire itself. One actor notices you and waves. "Stay," she calls, smiling. An audience of one is still an audience. Her companions laugh softly and continue their scene, a playful debate between two lovers who speak of fate and figs in equal measure. Their gestures are broad, but their eyes shine with a kind of quiet sincerity. You watch as the sunlight filters through a gap in the broken wall, laying a golden spotlight across the stage. Between lines, the young woman explains that this play is drawn from a lost Greek comedy, known only through scraps of papyrus and the stubborn guesses of historians. The scholars still argue, she says with a grin, whether the ending was tragedy or triumph. We decided it's both. Laughter ripples through the troupe and the rehearsal resumes, their voices blending with the drone of cicadas beyond the walls. When they finish, the woman crosses to you and presses a small laurel leaf into your palm. For remembrance, she says. And for luck in case the scholars never agree. You tuck it beside the rosemary, mint and jasmine. Your cloak now a portable garden of scents and textures, a record of the day as vivid as any scroll. Leaving the amphitheater, you descend a gentle slope toward a district where artisans hammer and chisel with steady rhythm. The smell of fresh-cut wood mingles with the metallic tang of bronze. A craftsman pauses from shaping a small figurine of Venus to greet you. His hands are dark with polish, his eyes bright with quiet pride. She protects lovers and travelers, he says, holding up the half-finished figure. Some believe she listens even when no prayers are spoken. Others, he adds with a sly smile, think she simply likes to watch. He shrugs. The scholars debate, but the lovers keep believing. He offers you a seat on a low stool and shows how he carves the folds of a gown with a chisel no wider than a reed. The delicate scrape of metal on stone is hypnotic, like a whisper of the river. Every statue is a memory, he tells you. Even if the name fades, the gesture remains. He places a small chip of marble in your hand, a curl shaped like a crescent moon. A piece of her to carry. You thank him, feeling the cool smoothness warm slowly in your palm before slipping it into your cloak. As you continue, the streets grow quieter again, leading toward an ancient garden tucked between two weathered villas. Here olive trees twist their silver leaves in the late light, and a single fountain sings in a gentle murmur. You sit on a stone bench, the marble chip cool against your skin, and watch a pair of turtles ease across the mossy ground. Their deliberate pace feels like a lesson in patience you didn't know you needed. A woman in a cloak of soft teal approaches, carrying a shallow basket of petals. Rose, marigold, and tiny white blossoms you cannot name. She scatters them into the fountain one handful at a time, her movements slow and reverent. When she notices you, she offers a quiet smile. For those who travel, she explains. The petals carry wishes downstream to the Tiber and onto the sea. Her voice is nearly a whisper. Some call it superstition, others devotion. The scholars, she lets the sentence drift, and you both share a small knowing laugh. She invites you to toss a handful yourself. The petals are cool and soft, leaving a faint perfume on your fingertips. As they touch the water, they swirl together in a tiny constellation, spinning slowly before slipping into the fountain's narrow outflow. You watch them disappear and feel a sudden calm settle over you, as though the garden has taken a gentle breath and shared it with you. The woman bows slightly and moves on, her basket now lighter, her steps soundless on the moss. You remain by the fountain, listening to the trickle of water and the distant hum of the city. For overhead the sky begins to soften toward evening, still bright, but with a subtle shift in hue, a promise that the day will soon exhale into dusk. Eventually you rise and follow a path that leads back toward the river. The Tiber greets you once more, its surface now a deeper gold, burnished by the sinking sun. Boats glide like slow-moving shadows across the current. The breeze carries the scents of everything you've gathered, citrus and jasmine, rosemary and mint, a ghost of marigold from the fountain's petals. Each aroma is a chapter of the journey, a living archive that no scroll could capture. You walk along the embankment as the sky tilts toward amber. Children's laughter fades, replaced by the measured conversations of evening strollers. Couples pause to watch the water. An old man leans on the railing and hums a melody that could be centuries old. You pass them all, your own steps unhurried, the night's calm stretching seamlessly into the day's slow twilight. As the first stars appear, you realize that the orchard story has never truly ended. It has merely widened to include every scent, every voice, every quiet offering you have gathered since moonrise. The scholars may continue their debates, but you know that history lives best in the hush between footsteps, in the fragrance of a single blossom, in the slow, patient movement of a river that remembers everything. Evening begins its gentle takeover of the city, washing the streets in amber and rose. Lanterns flicker to life one by one like cautious stars, their glow reflected on cobblestones that now hold the day's lingering warmth. You move along the Tiber's curve, the soft chorus of water and distant conversation blending into a lullaby that feels both ancient and immediate. The jasmine in your cloak releases a subtle sweetness with each step, mingling with the sharp green of rosemary and the faint citrus of orange blossom. The scents weave together like a private tapestry of every moment since the orchard. A broad stone bridge arches across the river ahead, its silhouette etched against the fading sky. You cross slowly, pausing halfway to watch the first true stars prick the twilight. The river below glimmers in shades of copper and deep violet, carrying tiny sparks of lantern light, like wandering fireflies. A small boat passes beneath you, its oars stirring quiet ripples that expand outward until they vanish into the dusk. You lean on the balustrade and breathe in the cool evening air, heavy with the promise of night yet to come. On the far bank, a cluster of market stalls offers the final fruits of the day. Merchants pack away their wares with unhurried motions, pausing to chat or share a last sip of watered wine. One stall still bustles with soft activity, a vendor selling roasted chestnuts from a clay brazier. The smoky aroma drifts across the bridge, warm and sweet. You wander closer, the glow of the brazier painting the vendor's face in flickers of gold. He greets you with a nod and hands you a small paper cone of chestnuts, their shells charred and fragrant. You crack one open, the nut inside tender and steaming. Its earthy sweetness melts on your tongue, blending with the lingering taste of figs and honey from earlier. A night gift, the vendor says with a grin, for travelers who listen to the river. He gestures toward the Tiber, where the current sighs in endless conversation. You thank him, the cone warming your hands as you continue along the bank. The path narrows into a quiet lane flanked by stone walls and low houses. Windows glow with lamplight. From within drift snippets of conversation and the soft clink of pottery. A cat slips silently across your path, tail held high, then disappears into the shadows as if returning to some private kingdom. Overhead the sky deepens to indigo, the first full moonlight pooling across the rooftops like spilled milk. You turn a corner and find a small square where musicians gather, their instruments catching the lantern glow. A woman with a reed flute begins a slow melody, joined by the gentle pluck of a lyre and the soft beat of a hand drum. The music drifts like a tide through the square, filling every stone and archway with quiet wonder. Couples pause to listen, children sway in sleepy rhythm, and even the night breeze seems to move in time with the notes. A young man offers you a seat on a low step beside him. These songs, he whispers, are older than the empire. Some say they were learned from the river itself. He closes his eyes as the music swells. Scholars argue, of course, but we simply play. You let the melody seep into you, each note a slow unraveling of the day's noise. The flute's voice is as soft as moonlight, the drum as steady as a heartbeat. It feels like the orchard again, an invisible gathering of stories, scents, and memories that needs no translation. When the song ends, the crowd murmurs its thanks. The flutist gives a small bow and smiles in your direction, as though recognizing the night's quiet history carried in your cloak. You rise, offering a silent nod of gratitude, and continue along the lane now lit by a ribbon of lanterns. Their warm light pools across the cobblestones, creating pockets of shadow and glow like the alternating measures of a lullaby. Farther on, you discover a narrow passage leading to a hidden garden. The entrance is marked only by a half-broken arch draped in ivy. Inside, the garden glows under the moon, silver light spilling over beds of sleeping flowers. A shallow pool mirrors the stars, its surface broken only by the occasional ripple of a drifting leaf. You kneel beside the water, the cool stone pressing gently against your knees, and gaze at your reflection. The orange blossom tucked in your cloak shines faintly in the moonlight, a tiny echo of the orchard where your journey began. A faint sound draws your attention, the soft scuff of sandals on stone. An older woman approaches, her hair bound with a ribbon the color of midnight. She carries a small bowl of rose petals and lavender. Without a word, she scatters the petals across the pool, the flowers spinning slowly as they release their scent. "For safe dreams," she murmurs, her voice barely louder than the night air. The scholars debate whether dreams guide us or follow us, but the flowers know. Her eyes meet yours, calm and kind. Add your own wish if you like. You reach into your cloak and draw the laurel leaf from the young actress, the marble chip from the sculptor, the sprig of mint from the hillside garden. One by one, you place them on the water's surface. They float together, a quiet fleet of memories that shimmer beneath the moon. The older woman smiles, her face luminous in the reflected starlight. "The river will find them," she says softly. It always does. You sit together in silence, watching the petals and leaves drift until they settle against the pool's edge. The garden seems to breathe with you, the night air cool and scented with lavender and distant citrus. Somewhere beyond the walls, the Tiber murmurs its endless story, and you realize the river's voice is never far, even here. The woman rises first. "Sleep well when you reach your bed," she says, gathering her empty bowl. "Carry the quiet with you." With a final nod, she slips through the ivy-draped arch and vanishes into the lantern-lit street, leaving only the faint trace of rose in her wake. You remain by the pool a while longer, the moon climbing higher, the stars bright and deliberate. Each memory of the night seems to settle gently into place. The orchard's whisper, the old man's staff on the bridge, the gardener's herbs, the actor's laughter, the flute's melody, the marble chip cool against your palm. Together they form a constellation more enduring than any carved stone or scholar's scroll. At last you stand, the jasmine and orange blossom releasing one last soft sigh as you draw your cloak close. The path back to the river feels effortless, your footsteps guided by the faint music of water and the comforting weight of all you have gathered. Rome hums quietly around you, but the city's bustle no longer intrudes. Instead, it joins the night's harmony, a gentle accompaniment to the living history you now carry. When you reach the embankment once more, the Tiber flows beneath the moonlight like a great silver ribbon, eternal and unhurried. You lean on the stone railing, breathing deeply of rosemary, jasmine, and the cool scent of river mist. Somewhere downstream, petals and parchment and quiet wishes drift toward the endless sea. The scholars may never agree on their meaning, but the river does not argue. It remembers. The moon hangs high and round, bathing the Tiber in a sheen of liquid silver. You linger by the embankment, feeling the stone still faintly warm beneath your palms, while a cool night breeze brushes against your face. Rome has shifted into its quieter self. Lanterns burn low in windows, market chatter has faded to an occasional murmur, and the clatter of hooves has given way to the soft shuffle of late strollers. Yet the city is far from asleep. It breathes slow and steady, like the river that has shaped its heart for centuries. You follow a narrow walkway along the water, the glow of the moon lighting each step, as if guiding you to one last discovery. Ahead, a small pier juts into the current, its wooden planks dark with age and damp with mist. A lone musician sits at the edge, a lyre resting across his knees. He plucks a quiet tune, the notes falling into the river like droplets of crystal. Without interrupting his melody, he tilts his head in greeting. The song is simple, but it carries the hush of deep water and the comfort of ancient lullabies. You settle nearby, your cloak releasing the faint perfume of jasmine, rosemary, and orange blossom. The musician glances at you, eyes reflecting the moonlight. "The river remembers more songs than I will ever know," he says softly. "I only borrow a few before they drift away again." His fingers trace the strings with effortless grace. Some call this music prayer, some call it memory. Scholars argue, of course. He smiles faintly. But the river doesn't argue. It simply listens. The melody deepens, wrapping the night in a gentle cocoon. You close your eyes, letting the sound mingle with the sense of your journey. The sharp green of mint, the warm sweetness of fig, the clean resin of cedar from a distant brazier. Each note seems to awaken a memory. The old man's staff tapping stone, the circle of storytellers by the orchard, the flutter of petals on a hidden garden pool. The river carries them all as though they are verses of the same song. When the music fades, you open your eyes to find the musician watching the current. "The moon is fullest when it listens," he murmurs. "People forget that listening is also an art." He gestures to the water. "Would you like to send a song of your own?" From a small pouch he draws a strip of papyrus and offers it to you with a reed pen. "Write what you would give the river. A word, a thought, a sound. It will know what to do." You hesitate, then write a single phrase, perhaps a name, perhaps only a feeling. The musician nods in approval and sets the papyrus afloat. The current catches it instantly, spinning it once before carrying it downstream into the darkness. The moonlight follows for a moment, then lets it go. "It will travel farther than either of us," he says quietly. "Farther than memory, perhaps." You thank him and rise, the cool air tightening around your shoulders. As you step away, the melody resumes behind you, softer now, like a benediction. The pier recedes into shadow while the river glows on. Tireless and sure, a winding path leads you back into the city's inner folds. The lanterns here are fewer, their glow subdued, casting long, rippling shadows across the walls. You walk slowly, savoring the contrast between the bustling morning you once knew and the near-sacred hush of this hour. Each footstep echoes like a gentle heartbeat. Somewhere a nightbird calls, a single note that hangs in the air and dissolves. Turning a corner, you come upon a secluded square framed by tall cypress trees. At its center stands a small circular temple, its columns worn smooth by centuries of wind and prayer. The entrance is open, and within burns a solitary oil lamp. You step inside. The air is cool and still, scented with wax and a faint trace of frankincense. Murals of vines and doves spiral along the walls, their pigments muted but enduring. A lone figure kneels near the lamp, a woman wrapped in a cloak the color of midnight wine. She glances up as you enter, her eyes calm and luminous. "Traveler," she whispers, "this is the temple of silent paths. Few come here now." Her voice is soft, but carries a resonance that fills the chamber. People once left offerings for the quiet between thoughts. "The scholars—" She lets the sentence trail off with a small smile. They debate whether silence can be sacred. But the silence doesn't care. You kneel beside her, the stone cool beneath your knees. Together you watch the small flame flicker. It dances in rhythms that seem to echo the musician's song, the river's flow, the orchard's breeze. "Every journey," she says, "needs a pause before its end. Here you listen to what you've gathered." She closes her eyes, and for a time there is only the sound of your breathing and the lamp's soft hiss. You think of everything you have collected, the honey cakes and figs, the laurel leaf from the young actress, the marble chip from the sculptor, the petals scattered in moonlit water, the countless voices of those who offered blessings without asking anything in return. You realize each gift has become a part of you, stitched together like a quilt of scents and memories that no historian's scroll could preserve. The woman opens her eyes and speaks barely above a whisper. "Carry it gently. The night will always walk with you, even when morning comes." She stands, bows slightly, and departs through a side door, leaving only the soft scent of incense in her wake. You remain until the lamp gutters low, then rise with a heart both heavy and light. Outside, the moon has begun its slow descent, painting the rooftops in silver blue. The city lies in a dreamlike hush. You wander through winding lanes where shadows pool like quiet rivers, every turn revealing another fragment of timeless Rome. A vine-covered wall, a sleeping cat, a doorway carved with faded symbols of protection. Each detail feels like an intimate conversation between past and present. Eventually you return to the Tiber once more. The river flows broad and calm, carrying with it everything you have offered. Words on papyrus, petals and herbs, the silent wishes of countless souls. You lean against the stone balustrade, breathing the mingled scents of jasmine, mint and ancient water. The moonlight glances off the current, and you imagine the orchard's blossoms drifting somewhere downstream, their fragrance merging with the sea. Here in this quiet hour, you understand that the journey has not been about finding answers. It has been about gathering textures of memory, the sound of a single flute, the warmth of a chestnut, the cool hush of a temple at midnight. The scholars will debate their meanings for centuries, but the river does not argue. It carries everything forward, patient and eternal, while you stand in the gentle echo of all you have learned. The last hour of night gathers around you like a velvet cloak, deep and steady. The moon slides westward, low and luminous, stretching a silver road across the Tiber. You rest your hands on the ancient stone balustrade, still faintly warm from the day, and feel the slow breath of the river beneath you. Rome is nearly silent now. Markets long closed, doorways shuttered, only the soft scuff of an occasional passerby echoing through the lanes. Even the city's cats have retreated to rooftops and courtyards. Leaving the streets to the quiet, you inhale, and the fragrances you've carried through this long wandering rise like a chorus. The bright whisper of orange blossom, the cool clarity of mint, the dusky sweetness of jasmine, the faint resin of rosemary, a trace of laurel and rose petals. Each scent is a memory, and together they are a map of everything you have gathered. The orchard's mystery, the hidden shrines, the storytellers and musicians, the silent temple where the flame trembled. You realize the journey has shaped itself into a single, unbroken thread. A night that began in the hush of blossoms and now ends in the hush of stars. A fisherman approaches the railing a few paces away, a coil of net resting on his shoulder. He nods politely, not wishing to disturb the spell. "The river is patient," he says softly, as though speaking to the water more than to you. "It carries yesterday, today and tomorrow without asking which is which." He casts his net with a practiced sweep, the mesh flashing briefly in the moonlight before settling on the dark surface. The ripple spreads, then fades. He smiles faintly. "No scholar can measure that," he murmurs and turns his attention back to the current. You leave him to his vigil and continue along the embankment. A stone stair descends to a small landing where boats are moored, their ropes creaking gently in the night air. You sit on the lowest step, letting your feet hover just above the cool water. The river speaks in soft murmurs, an endless conversation of ripples against wood and stone. Listening, you hear echoes of every voice you encountered, the gardener offering mint, the actress pressing a laurel leaf into your hand, the old philosopher beneath the jasmine, the woman scattering petals for safe dreams. They seem to gather here not as ghosts, but as companions in the living night. Above, the stars wheel slowly. A thin cloud passes across the moon, diffusing its light into a pale halo. The world softens. Your eyelids grow heavy, but the weariness is pleasant, like the gentle pull of a long story nearing its final page. You lean back against the step and close your eyes. Images drift behind them, petals on water, a bronze owl glinting in lamplight, a parchment carried downstream, the faint glow of lanterns in the orchard where it all began. The memories arrive without urgency, each one sliding gently into the next. You remember the quiet laughter of the circle of storytellers, the slow dance of the flame in the temple of silent paths, the delicate chip of marble warm in your palm. They are not separate events anymore. They are a single continuous breath. A breeze stirs, cool and fragrant. It lifts the edge of your cloak and carries the mingled scents outward across the river. For a moment you imagine the air itself remembering, weaving your night into its endless tapestry. Somewhere downstream, the petals and offerings you released are still floating, perhaps already at the sea, perhaps lingering in some quiet eddy. You picture them glowing faintly in the moonlight, small beacons of everything you've learned, that history lives in scent and sound, that silence can be as eloquent as speech, that every gesture, however small, becomes part of the river's patient memory. The fisherman hums a low melody, barely more than a vibration against the night. It blends with the water's murmur, until you can no longer tell one from the other. You open your eyes just enough to see him, silhouetted against the silver path of the moon. He raises a hand in quiet salute, as if recognizing that you too are offering something wordless to the river. You rise at last and follow the final curve of the embankment. The city behind you sleeps deeper with each step. A distant bell tolls the approach of dawn. Its tone is low and unhurried, a gentle reminder that time continues whether anyone measures it or not. You feel no urge to rush. The night has taught you the luxury of slow movement, of letting each breath be its own destination. The path narrows to a secluded garden where olive trees stand like silent witnesses. Here you pause one more time, leaning against a trunk that has known more seasons than any historian could name. The bark is rough under your fingertips, alive with the cool damp of night. You rest your forehead against it and breathe, letting the scents of mint and orange blossom mingle with the tree's own earthy perfume. Thoughts dissolve into something softer, not conclusions, not even memories, but sensations, the warmth of honeyed wine, the cool slide of moonlight on water, the distant laughter of children long since asleep. The scholars will debate their facts and footnotes, but you know now that the truest history is felt, not proven. It lives in fragrance, in the hush between footsteps, in the patient current of a river that asks for nothing and carries everything. The bell tolls again, a shade lighter now, hinting at dawn. You step back onto the path and begin to walk. The horizon has begun to pale, a faint wash of silver creeping behind the hills. The Tiber glows like molten glass, ready to trade moonlight for morning. You follow its curve until the first blush of sunrise touches the farthest rooftops. The city stirs almost imperceptibly. A shutter creaks open, a single bird calls. Yet the quiet you carry does not fade. It deepens. Each inhalation is a gentle tide. Each exhalation releases the weight of centuries. You feel the orchard within you still, its blossoms, its hidden voices, its patient rituals. You are not leaving it behind. You are bringing it forward. The final bell of night fades into silence. You stop and close your eyes, letting the last darkness settle like a blanket. The scents of your journey, orange blossom, jasmine, rosemary, mint, laurel, rose, rise one more time, distinct yet inseparable. They hover in the cool air like a whispered blessing. Your breath slows, matching the river's rhythm. The world narrows to sound and scent, to the gentle press of stone beneath your feet, to the soft thrum of a city on the edge of waking. The orchard's magic lingers, infinite and calm, a secret you now share with the quiet itself. And as the first true light of dawn spills across the water, you let the night's story close around you like a final embrace. The scholars may argue forever. The river will remember forever. You will simply breathe.